Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space 8.4, the vainglory of a possum. We are back.
Hell yeah. We're back on our bullshit. So last time we found out Dragon was alive the whole time, idiot. But everyone's still all sad because they think he's dead.
We got
so when
the
he comes
character
back,
development of it.
I'm already imagining it's gonna be so anime when he comes back. Everyone's gonna be like, Dragon, you really made it. And then Musazi's like, I knew you wouldn't die so easily in the corner. Yeah. Dragon Hatred, my only rival, my truest friend.
Who are you?
My guiding moonlight.
Oh, it's the sword
With
guy.
Dragon. Oh, it's that sword guy from the Supremacy. Skipper's finger was still pointed at Musazi's head, ready to deliver the coup de grace. But when Musazi spoke quietly, there was no fear of death in it. Is he really dead? He asked, head bowed. This guy is, reposting. Skipper blinked. Yeah, he's really dead. Bang! Skipper did not fire. Instead, the door he'd entered through flew open, striking the wall, and a squad of security officers breached the boiler room. Their commander, the asshole named Marsh, snarled as he pointed his plasma rifle right at Skipper's head. This time, his finger was secured around the trigger with grim resolve. Asshole! He snarled. Shoulda known not to leave you alone. You think you got privacy, dickhead? Bruno glanced up at the security camera nestled in the corner of the room. It was nearly scrap, barely functional, but clearly still operating. They hadn't responded to the special officers interrogating him, but they were responding to Skipper's actions? Skipper slowly lowered his finger to his side, taking in a deep breath. One more word, Marsh promised, and I blow your goddamn head off. Don't think your Aether will save you now. We know what you're doing. Bruno took a step forward, only to stop as two of the guards swung their guns in his direction. Look, he said warily, eyes fixed on the barrels of the weapons. This was self-defense. These two were attacking me. These two were attacking me. Marsh's eyes were cold. Got no evidence of that. What? His eyes flicked to the pile of meat below Bruno. From what I can see, you've already killed one person, and you were right in the middle of killing another. Even if you ain't repurposed, you're dangerous. Execution, Captain? Asked one of Marsh's subordinates, a burly-looking man with tattooed arms. Like you said, can't have him running around. Marsh looked sorely tempted, but he slowly shook his head. His sile will raise hell if I don't clear it with him first. We've got cells for trespassers. Throw him in there while we wait. His gaze flicked to Musazi, still prone on the floor. All of them. I want to know who this guy is, too. Musazi hadn't said anything, hadn't even moved since the soldiers had come in. No, since Skipper had answered his question. He just continued to stare down at the floor with an inscrutable look on his face. Take him, Marsh ordered before nodding to the corpse on the floor, and get this one to the morgue. As the guard seized Bruno, he gritted his teeth in frustration. As the guard seized Skipper, he continued to glare in anger. As the guard seized Musazi, he just looked silently down at the floor. Lost. No need to be so rough, North grunted as Ruth restrained him, pushing him into a storage room. She manifested one of her gauntlets on both his hands, the cramped confines of the... Wait, her hands or his?
His.
Oh, okay, she's using it I see.
Yeah.
The cramped confines of the armor keeping him from moving his fingers. Needless to say, she kept the claws of the gauntlet recorded. Satisfied he wouldn't be moving around, she kicked him into the corner of the room where he sprawled to the floor. Before he could scramble back to his feet, Ruth knelt down and placed a heavy hand on his shoulder. She didn't let go. You can trick my eyes, she growled, but not my hand. I think you're making an illusion. I cut you to pieces. No questions asked. North frowned, rubbing an eye with the side of his arm. Seriously? This is the thanks I get for saving you? Dragon, his head blown open. Ruth's grip tightened on North's shoulder, and the umbrant winced in pain. When she spoke, her voice was dangerously quiet. You didn't save Dragon, she said. I'm no miracle worker, but I did my best, he grimaced, squirming in her grasp. If I hadn't convinced that Nero guy to come get you, you'd have all died back in White Village. Or worse, you'd have ended up like the Repurposed. And the time before that, too. Ruth frowned. What do you mean? The Unite Regent? North said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Full-on supremacy attack on a UAP warship? What? You guys thought you survived that because you were just so badass? I was looking out for you. Ruth raised an unimpressed eyebrow. Dragon said you left him to die back there. And if we're going that far back, I remember Skipper saying you were helping the citizen back on Talden. Were you looking out for us back then, too? I didn't know Dragon. North shrugged without so much as an ounce of shame. And that shit back on Talon was just a job. Nothing personal. I didn't even know you guys were involved until it was almost over. Come on, cut a guy some slack. Let bygones be bygones. And the time you faked your death and let us all mourn for you, how are they going to feel about Dragon? He's just North Part 2. Guys, I wasn't really dead the whole time. Was that just a job too? Ruth's voice was cold as ice, her eyes just as frigid. For a moment, North had no answer for that. But only for a moment. That was, personal stuff, he muttered, glancing away. Ruth gritted her teeth as she looked down at the traitorous man. She had no doubt he was lying about nearly everything he'd just said, but she didn't know why. Dragon would have known why. He'd have been able to figure it out. Dragon, his head blown apart. Ruth squeezed her eyes shut. It was fine. She'd be dreaming about that image from now on, so it was best that she get used to it. As she closed her eyes, however, she heard it. Boots thumping against the floor, heading their way. Skipper coming back from getting Bruno? No, it was more than one person, and as they moved, Ruth could hear them talking. There was a girl with them, too! Oh, wait, that's Marsh. There was a girl with them, too! The guy called Marsh barked from not far away, his voice echoing through the halls. Micah was with her! Find them! Ruth's eyes snapped open, and as she did, she could see that North had visibly paled. He reached forward, grabbing her by the forearm. You cannot let them find us! He hissed insistently, eyes wide with terror. Why not? The things they're doing here! The things up top! North glanced up as if he could see through the ceiling, like whatever was up there horrified him. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Ruth was immovable. Try me. The sounds of approaching officers were growing louder and louder, closer and closer. North shook his head. No time. The only way we get out of this is if we work together. You need to trust me. I can use my holograms. The boots were nearly upon them. Please, North whispered. I don't trust you, Ruth said, and then a second later she released him. But I'll let you save us, just this once. Transparent aether crackled around North's body as he grinned, and there was a thud as the door was kicked in. Alright, popcorn, my throat hurts.
Well, that could have gone better. Marie felt cold metal beneath her as her body was moved onto some kind of stretcher, no doubt being taken to the morgue the guard had described. That had been a close one. The guy called Skipper really was her natural enemy, able to rip her to shreds without even getting close. It had been all she could do just to make sure a toy wasn't killed, and even that had been difficult. She had to create a new hand just through strands of bone and sinew and wind it through the darkness of the room until it reached the broken camera. From there it had been a matter of reconnecting it to alert the guards. Creating an independent organism from her biomass would have triggered the needle, so she'd had to keep her hand connected with a long, thin tendril like an umbilical cord.
Ew.
If one of her opponents had looked just too deep into the dark, the cat would have been out of the bag for good. She'd disabled her nervous responses to masquerade as a corpse, but if she hadn't, she could guarantee she'd be shaking like a leaf. She repaired one of her eyes as much as she dared, just enough to repair her vision while not being too obvious. White, sterile ceiling was spread out before her, and she was still being moved. Just an entirely different part of the building from what they'd seen so far. At least this whole incident had given her the opportunity to begin investigating. The plan had collapsed from the very start. The Arrowhead had managed to arrive long before Hadrian's crew, but when they made planetfall, had been attacked by the repurposed and forced to find shelter here. Given the circumstances, they'd had to adjust their plan, coming out and saying that their agent's supremacy wasn't the way to go. Instead, they were representatives of one of the GIB shell companies. And now, of course, one of them was a corpse. The best thing to do would be to figure out a safe way across the desert and return to the Arrowhead. As far as she knew, the ship was still intact where they'd left it, but getting to it was the tricky part. Marie was pretty sure she could adopt a form that would allow her to cross the desert record speed, but Mazazi wasn't so fortunate. Even if he clung onto Marie as she ran, being touched by the repurpose carried the unacceptable risk of him being infected.
Real quick question. It might have already been mentioned, but why haven't they just reached out to other planets yet?
Well, the communications are down, apparently.
Oh, gotcha.
But that's being a bit sussy as well. It's like, well, wouldn't people have come if there's no communications at all? So we don't know what that situation is about.
Indeed.
And so they waited, and so they investigated. Movement stopped as her body was placed down on an autopsy table, still splayed out in the throes of supposed death. She could hear the beeping of machinery around her, the slight heat as a medical automatic scanned her form. She made sure to confirm its biases, stopping her heart, seizing her breathing. Cardiovascular functions could be handled in more subtle ways, and she had enough stored oxygen to survive for hours without air. Death confirmed, the automatic bleated from above her. Time of death, 05:33 local. She heard someone else grunt above her. The medical examiner, maybe? Who else witnessed the murder? It was a man's voice. "God Squad, led by Anton Marsh," the automatic responded. "Unknown male, times 3. Another grunt, and this time Marie recognised the voice. It was the guy who ran this place, Tyson Hasiah, CEO of Exocorp. What was he doing examining a corpse personally? "Give Marsh and his men the usual bonuses," Hasiah said, "and approve the execution of the prisoners. Have their bodies in this one taken down for enfant." Oh ho! Someone wanted to keep things hush-hush. Some kind of secret project? One that required corpses? She was sure Mizazi could fight off any executioners, but that should be a toy. She would never call to Mizazi. What are you thinking, Anthony? You can fight off any executioners. But only she could hear through the ears of a corpse. Well, she could probably hear through her eyes as well. But...
Marie, like the fucking anime girl who's like, call me by my first name.
Perhaps she could continue being dead for just a little longer. Dragon used his glowing eyes to light the way as he walked through the dark tunnels, Anne still clinging to his back. Occasionally he'd feel her shift position slightly, but apart from that she didn't make a sound. "How'd you get down here?" he finally asked, keen to break the silence. "This is a long way from White Village. I can't imagine you ran. Do you have a vehicle, a bike or something?" It took Anne a moment to reply, and when she did, the answer was unenlightening as expected. "Don't live in a bike," she grumbled. "Bike all dusty and messy like, not a place to live. Got arms and legs all mine, thanks. Not meat but mine." Dragon sighed. "Yes, I know you don't live in a bike. I'm asking if you rode one here." "Don't ride no bike." "What, so you walked? I don't believe you." He felt Anne's hand slap against the back of his head. "You fell, dead boy."
Why does she sound like... Have you ever watched Ed, Edd n Eddy?
I love it, yeah.
She sounds like Ralph. Ed boy.
"Unrelated, but yes, I fell." Dragon rolled his eyes. "Obviously you didn't fall because all your bones are still intact. If you came down here yourself, you could at least tell me the route to get back." "Don't know no route," Anne mumbled. "Scary." Dragon had to suppress another sigh. He'd known kids could be hard to talk to, but this was a whole other level of frustration. Would he be mean if he yelled at her? Nobody else was here, so it didn't really matter, but still...
Dragon, can't you use your cognitive brain to realize she's talking weird even for, like, a 12-year-old? Like, clearly something's up with her.
Still, this wasn't quite right, was it? Wasn't this situation bizarre? Shouldn't he be questioning it more? Why was he just happily walking along like this was completely natural? It was like his thoughts were being guided down a specific path, surrounded by invisible walls. Sunlight hit his... So yeah, I got you right as you said it as well. It only comes up in the story. Sunlight hit his face as he stepped out of the tunnel. They were still in a system of caves, but part of the rocky ceiling above had collapsed, allowing sunlight to flood in. It was far too high for it to climb, but Gemini World would allow him to reach it without too much of an issue. Carrying 2 people made that idea a little more risky, but he glanced back at Anne, who was chewing one of her fingers idly. She wasn't too big, it should be fine.
He's definitely a repurposed, and his brain's been fucking reworked. Now he's like super calm Dragon.
Dragon turned back to look up and stopped in his tracks, eyes wide. "Trouble," Anne murmured mid-chew, as if the entire situation had nothing to do with her. Standing right on the edge of the hole were 4 human figures, silhouetted by the blazing sun. At first, Dragon thought they might be repurposed, but that didn't fit. The way they stood was calm and focused, unlike the animalistic thrashing of those enemies. They looked down at him, and as the light shifted, Dragon got a better look at them. Each of the figures was wearing heavy metal armour, the sunlight glinting off of it, concealing every inch of skin.
It's armour, but it's like it has Metallica on it.
The armour was pragmatic in appearance, industrial grey. The necks and heads of the individuals were entirely covered by steel domes, framed on either side by jagged protruding shoulder blades. Singular portholes stood cyclopean out the front of each helmet, fogged up so that no faces were visible. Dragon could see they were holding weaponry, rifles, each of them, although the models might have been slightly different. He couldn't tell from
I'm kind of imagining like a weird version of the Halo suit, the Master Chief suit.
Maybe, yeah. What he could see from this distance were words, the black words that were embedded on their bulky collars. Dead Hand.
Wait a minute. Aren't they at the top of like a giant chasm?
Yeah.
How the fuck can he see that?
Conscience can see good.
Okay.
But it's not that big. It's like they've ascended at this point. While they go
Wait, they've climbed?
It's been going up as they're going through the tunnels, so now they're like...
Oh, the way you described it, I thought they, like, when they were on the bridge, they couldn't even see the bottom of this place.
Yeah, he fell off the bridge, and now he's been climbing up since we've last seen him, so he's been climbing for a while.
Okay, I see.
the black words that are embedded on their dulky collars. Dead hand. Those words were surrounded by a sigil like a hand spread out, each finger and thumb terminating in bloody bone. Danger, Anne muttered again, and that was all the confirmation Dragan needed.
The vainglory of a possum. So who's the possum in this scenario?
Marie.
Marie's a possum? Oh, because she's playing You failed, dead boy. Ralph from Ed, Edd n Eddy. Another good chapter, another banger. I'm very curious. I actually don't mind that Dragan lived. I knew that was going to happen, but I'll be very interested if you do something like when his brain reformed, it changed his personality or the way he thinks in some way. I think that'd be a really interesting, bizarre bit of character development because his brain grew back wrong or weird or different.
Well, maybe we'll find out more.
Yeah, I'm very interested. Also, I wonder if this is a permanent power he has, he's a repurposed now and he has Marie regeneration, or if it was a one-time gift. But yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
What's going on with Titan Messiah? What's he thinking?
Yeah, he's experimenting on someone or something. Bye.
Bye.